Hello and welcome to New Game Plus. I'm Tim. I'm joined by Donald. How are you?
I am still knees deep in the big sandbox that is Metal Gear Solid: The Phantom Pain. We reviewed it last week, but it's the game that just really keeps on giving.
Yes.
Isn't it?
It certainly is. And it's something that you keep discovering new things about it, because one of our crew was tranking one of the soldiers and he fell face down in a puddle and ended up drowning. And that's like the sort of small detail that you just don't see in other games.
The sort of thing that only like someone like Hideo Kojima would want to program in the game.
Yes.
Only he would want you to have the ability to tell your horse to do it, only to have him defecate on your face.
That is Hideo Kojima for you. But along with Metal Gear Solid 5, we've been playing some other games. You've been playing Disney Infinity.
Yes, the latest edition of the Disney Infinity franchise. We check out this Star Wars filled edition, but we also have a review of Mad Max, which also came out around the same time as all these games, actually.
Yes, very angry Max. Now, we also have an interview with a comic book artist.
Yes.
And a game developer making a game currently for the Commodore 64.
In the year 2015.
Yes. Now, I see a lot of people make new games for games like SNES games, and they just get old carts of Madden and end up just flashing onto these cheap carts. But yeah, first Commodore 64, a new game, it's very interesting.
And also, it's like, it just goes back to like everyone's having this sort of, there was a sort of pixel art renaissance. So everyone's making game with the pixel art style that harkens back to the 8-bit and 16-bit, except they don't really look, they don't look like games that would actually run in the area. They look just too good.
Yeah.
But here we have a game that, actually, runs on the Commodore 64.
Yeah, on the original hardware. It's very cool. But first up, Disney Infinity.
Out of all the Toys to Life franchises, Disney Infinity was always the most interesting one. However, it didn't quite always meet its ambitions, but it was always fascinating to watch. After all, we've got all the big brands, and this year they've got Star Wars, to absolutely no one's surprise. Gerard, what did you and your kids think about this Star Wars infused edition of Disney Infinity?
Well, my kids have hardly stopped playing it since we got it. So, Star Wars, I'm not a big fan of the non-original ones, but it's actually made my boy want to watch the prequels and the cartoons because he's really got into it.
Oh, but let's detract from that particular what's called unintended effect. The actual playset, the Star Wars Twilight of the Republic, which covers the Clone Wars cartoon, and essentially is the greatest hits from that franchise. But I'd like to say it's rather fun for a single player component, as in the controls are much improved over Disney Infinity 2.0. Combat is still just mashing triangle, but there's finesse to it, and it feels a bit more substantial, and it's just enough to push it over the edge.
Yeah, it's fun because it's easy to play, especially for kids who wouldn't be able to handle a very sophisticated control scheme. Fun to play, you play it for a long time, and I know that's what I've seen at home. It's been played for a long, long time.
Speaking of, the toy box has also seen a lot of experience in your household, hasn't it?
Yes. I know one of the great things in the toy box is you can make random racetracks. I know my boys been making racetracks, and we race around with our Disney Infinity Cars characters. You can also make a house, the interiors back again, and that's really, my daughter's got hooked on that. She's been making massive houses, decorating the rooms, like there'll be a Rapunzel room and stuff like that, and she's really got into that. And the boy makes in the toy box like traps and things to set up for the bad guys to kill, to level up his characters. They have really, really gotten into this.
And I've seen what some of the community has built with the tools in Disney Infinity 3.0. It's quite impressive. And overall, Disney Infinity 3.0 is a much improved package over the last years. And you've got the element of Star Wars and just the iterations of the tools and the community training. It stands to be a really good addition this year.
So it's always hard to know what sort of game to make with these big sprawling animes, and they don't get much bigger or more sprawling than One Piece. And they went the Musou route, which is to basically do crossover games with the basic mechanics of Dynasty Warriors style games. And this is the third entry, the first that's sort of coming into the new gen as well, the PS4. Now, the first game was a sort of standard abridged version of the story up to that point, which was up until about the time skip. The second game went past the time skip, but was more of a dream scenario, so it's just a whole bunch of made-up scenarios. And this third game is sort of taking a bit from both, in that it has the abridged story, almost all the way up to where the manga's up to now, Doflamingo, and it has a dream mode where you just get to play a bunch of random maps and do sort of random stuff as well.
But coming into this game, I think you do want to actually be a fan of the series because, hey, it like a lot of the leveling up system, it's explained, but it's very much takes from the previous game, which is 2. It takes from the coins, and like, it's much easier to jump in this game if you've played 1 and 2.
Exactly. There's so many mechanics and there are so many different leveling up systems that unless you have an understanding, it will be confusing. But if you have played the previous, it makes complete sense because it's pretty much not changed at all.
Yeah.
And it's like, with all the story modes and all the in-jokes and things like that, like the ability to, take your hat off and things like that, it really is a game that is to be enjoyed by
the fans. Yeah.
And it has a lot of interesting references that otherwise, most people would just see it as a regular Muso game.
That said, like, the actual story itself is really, really well done. The scenes that are shown, they're coming out very well nice on the PS4. Like, they're working it hard to the bone, and it's bringing really nice detail.
Yeah, but the one thing about the game is that it is a time sink. And, if you want to be a pirate, you got to give up your life.
Hi guys, Tristan Jones here. We are at All Star Comics with a very, very special guest this evening. I'd like to introduce Becky Cloonan.
Hi.
So you've been New York based were New York based for a very long time, and that I know for people outside of America and maybe in America as well, that's kind of like one of the big comic hubs or it's perceived as being one of the big comic hubs, across the world. Was that sort of a thing there? Was it a big scene for you, or was it, how was it being a comic creator in New York?
That was great. I went to school there. That's how I ended up moving to New York. I went to SVA, which is the School of Visual Arts, and I was actually there for animation, and I dropped out of school. And I moved around a little tiny bit, but for the most part, I was in New York, like on and off for about 13 years.
Yeah.
And it's expensive, and I feel like I don't know if I could do it anymore. Like, I don't think I could move back, just because I can't really afford it.
Yeah.
And, at the time, what I could afford was kind of like a little not great and like kind of far from Manhattan. I was living like way out in Brooklyn. It was a nice neighborhood, but at the same time, you're kind of like feel a little bit removed. The community is really strong there, and I had a great studio space. And when I was in college, I hooked up with a bunch of other people in like my grade and like people a few years above me, and it was like James Jean, Tomer Hanukkah, Farrell Dalrymple, Brandon Graham was there. He didn't go to school with us, but he was like floating around. He lived on my sofa for like a little bit. Yeah, so like Nate Powell.
Yeah.
So many people who Tom Herpich, who works on Adventure Time now. So many people I knew then that were like my peers, and we would do stuff together. Like we had Meat House like collective, so we self-published books in school, like short stories, as like anthologies. Mm-hmm. And now they're all like just like at the top of their game.
Yeah. Something I wanted to ask with you being a writer and an artist. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you went through school with kind of an art mind, with your degree choice and all that sort of stuff. But prior to that, were you sort of, I guess, at odds as to whether or not you wanted to write or draw, or was it always just kind of both, or was there one kind of overriding sort of thing?
I always wanted to do both when I was a kid. When I was like really young. Of course, it's my dream. I wanted to like make my own comics.
Yeah.
And then when I slowly fell into it, it's like working with Brian. He just gave me the opportunity to do something bigger than I had been able to do before.
Yeah.
So it was like this. He gave me he challenged me a lot too, because I'm working with a writer now who's like, we have to draw a bunch of cars and like you have to draw things. I would never draw these things. So he was like, now you have to draw a crowd scene. And I'm like, oh man, I don't. How do you draw a cop car? Like, I don't know. How do you draw a tank? I don't know. So all of demo was and everything was just challenging me to do new things and to like push myself in different directions, which, without that, I wouldn't be where I am right now.
Yeah.
And he's a phenomenal writer too. So I learned a lot about writing and about pacing and about, he was really writing for me, like writing to my strengths.
Yeah.
But in doing that, it like challenged me to get better at things I wasn't as good at.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to figure out what I was really good at. So,
Thanks again, Becky. We have been recording at All Star Comics on 53 Queen Street, or roughly thereabouts. So come down, check them out, and thanks again.
Welcome to Old Game Plus, and this week we're going about as retro as you can go. We've got a person who's developed a Commodore 64 game with us today. Leigh from Throwback Games, welcome.
Thanks very much, Jared and Oz.
Now, you've developed a basketball game called Jam It. Well, I suppose the question is, why? What was your inspiration for that?
I think the main inspiration was, growing up as a kid, like I had a Commodore 64, and I always wanted to program games, put together games. And a couple of my favourite games at the time, there was a game called 1-on-1 Basketball, Dr. J versus Larry Bird. I've always been a big basketball fan. Loved that game. You could do the backboard breaking dunks and things like that, which I've managed to put in this game, so that's been really good. And there's another game from the C64 era, not widely known, but called GBA Basketball. And it's a 2-on-2 game, similar to mine. It was like a full court thing, but it seemed to have a bit more strategy and things where you could call plays and all the rest of it. But I think what I've come up with is kind of a mashup of the two. It's kind of a bit more of the arcade side of things and arcade action, but I've just tried to put as much of all the excitement of a pro game of basketball into this.
Now, distribution. I know this is your thing.
Yeah, distribution. So is it a digital only copy, or what have you done for distribution?
Yeah, so you can get it right now on digital download, so you can play it on an emulator, and it supports. It's a game that supports 1 to 4 players, so you can just play it by yourself, or you can get a few friends around, and very shortly it's going to come out on tape, disc, and cartridge, which I hear you're happy to.
Happy Oz.
Made your day.
That is fantastic that it's coming out in the old formats. Like, that is just... that makes my heart go.
It's
a fantastic game. We've been playing it, both of us, and it's just got little touches that we love. So, shaking screen when there's a slam dunk, rewind for a few seconds when there's a shot made, and it just shows you how it all happened. So good things.
The AI is very good. If you play on brutal, it is brutal.
It's really brutal.
It's
very old school brutal.
And when you see the old Commodore 64 sprites, they just make you smile. The old music
and the color schemes and stuff for the Commodore 64. Yeah, it's certain color scheme.
That machine.
Yeah, I totally recommend anyone checking it out for a good retro game experience that was made recently. Well, that's about as old Game Plus as you get, isn't it?
Thank you very much, Leigh.
No worries. Thanks very much, Oz.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.
Well, Shaney, it's time for despair once again with Ultra Despair Girls, Danganronpa, another episode.
Isn't it? Oh, wait. Danganronpa, another episode?
Let's just agree it is a mouthful. So jumping straight into it, you take the role of Komaru Negi, who is the main protagonist, or the sister of the main protagonist of the first Danganronpa series. She jumps in and she is antagonized by the Warriors of Hope, 5 kids hell-bent on world domination and getting rid of every single adult in existence.
Now, the gameplay in this game is much more, I guess, gameplay orientated. I don't know how that really did work.
Well, so for the uninitiated, the first 2 Danganronpa games were strictly visual novels.
Yeah, where this is much more of a game in the sense where you've actually got puzzle elements, you've got like combat, third-person shooter elements, and even like this little bit of like challenge mode, like mission-based style, which I've really enjoyed myself, but you didn't really like?
No. Well, it's an expansion of the over-the-shoulder shooter dynamic, where instead of just shooting enemies and making it as boring as possible, there's certain elements where you got to fulfill certain requirements, where you got to kill enemies under like one explosion or using a certain effect, another thing as well, that the effects in the game where you use dance bullets, paralyzed bullets, and your enemies kind of go along to that beat. So instead of just shooting them, you can actually keep them in one place, and there's a strategic element to it.
Yeah, but it does, I guess, sometimes take it out of like the game core, like I guess the core complex of the game, where it's just like the missions are sometimes very, very annoying, or sometimes just not difficult, but just slow, I guess.
They haven't quite found their bearings with this shooting element as well. So even though it is fairly action heavy, there's a lot of cutscenes that rip you from the action straight away, where the game isn't quite action oriented, but tries to go back to its visual novel roots, which I find a bit concerning. There's a bit of identity crisis there.
That said, the visual novel roots, or even just the animated scenes, are really, really nice. Like, they've got the art style from the first game and second game really down pat in this one. And just like, it almost seems like an anime, most of the scenes.
Safe to say that Danganronpa series is very stylistically driven, and this is no exception. So I still think it's fairly 50-50 for me on this one. It's still pretty good for the fans, but for everyone else, I highly suggest that you take a grain of salt with this one.
Son. This is where we planted the seed to the cancer that's eating Pathos 2. It wasn't meant to be like this. No one told us this could happen.
Why we showed that trailer, considering that I personally won't be going anywhere near that game at all. No spooks for me, thank you very much.
Yes, by the guys that did Amnesia, and they are very good at making a very atmospheric game. And from the trailer itself, I mean, you get a lot of Doom vibes, some Alien vibes.
A little bit of Bioshock with the Under the Sea setting, which apparently was based on a whim.
Yeah, and...
but you know what? It works.
It's something cool, because not a lot of devs do this sort of game, or do it well. The people that do it, these are the best at really making that atmospheric, very spooky style game. And it's not something that's too like combat focused. Like we had Alien Isolation recently, which was a fantastic atmospheric game, but it was still very much gameplay. You were hunting down the soldiers and everything, but this looks to be more of an experience.
And it's sort of refreshing as well in terms of the horror genre, I imagine, since I'm not going to be playing these games. But recently, if you're talking about horror games, then you're pretty much only talking about Five Nights at Freddy's. Yeah. And those are all just jump scare, just primal through and through. There's no finesse to it. It's just loud noises and tiger or something like that. Or I'm pretty sure it's a fox, or I don't know.
Something.
Yeah.
So Jason, I want you to spend the next 3 minutes telling me everything you know about Mad Max.
Okay, so made by the man in the movies that we do not talk about anymore, Mr. Gabson, something like that. He was the main guy in the first three, made by George Miller. It's like post-apocalyptic world.
We wouldn't have Fallout, Fest of the North Star, Borderlands.
It's been very influential in a lot of series, let's be honest. Lots of games, lots of movies, like
so
everything.
Speaking of games,
Mad Max came out as a video game. I see what you were doing.
And made by the guys who made Just Cause.
So instantly you think, okay, it's an open world Mad Max game.
It's a huge open world Mad Max
game. Made by,
the
people who've probably made one of the biggest, most involved worlds that we've had so far. So Except this time, there's less things in there. Because obviously the
It's a wasteland.
It is. And so the thing of Just Cause is there's lots of things to blow up, to break, some of this. The different thing with Mad Max is that it is the wasteland. There's settlements and there's like occasional like salvage points and things like that. But it is an open wasteland. And you start the game, you lose the V8 Interceptor.
The last of the V8s.
The black on black. And so you lose that, and then you find this little fella who helps you build a new car. And he's got this whole kind of religious thing behind it, and you're trying to take back the wasteland.
And becomes your guide as you drive along the world, and he actually works. Like, doesn't become too great and like, oh, you should go do this, you should go do that.
It's a fantastic way to add that gameplay element of the car will fix itself without having to say it's magic. Do
you know what I mean? The car will drive itself.
Exactly. So it's really well done there. The actual gameplay itself, like, I think the problem it faces is up close it's a little bit clunky because games like Just Cause don't have to have particularly precise inputs.
Of course, because you're just gliding everywhere.
Yeah. So it is a little bit clunky. However, despite the few things that I find wrong with it, gameplay-wise, it's pretty great. Driving around the wasteland, harpooning blokes out of cars, things like that. And if you notice, I'm dropping lots of Australianisms or colloquialisms.
Because you're getting to a point.
Getting to a point. The problem with this game is that it is, like, there was a big push for it to be Australian, and they've done a pretty good job of that. Like, Max sounds Australian, if a little bit try-hardy. There's some really good Aussie voices, and then there are some terrible Aussie voices. And the guy who does Chum Bucket, I know you're an American, mate, but you've watched the movie. It's not Dinky D. It's Dinky fucking Die.
Yep.
Right. So it does lose. So only Australians are going to notice that. As far as the actual game goes, though,
it's fun.
It's fun. It is beautiful, well imagined. It nails its art style.
Like it's a beautiful looking game. As soon as you hit a sandstorm, look, sandstorms in 2015 are a thing,
and it's
great.
Compared to the ones in Metal Gear Solid, where they offer some kind of tactical issue, these are terrifying.
Like they're the storms in Fury Road. If you saw that movie and you saw that scene, you know what to expect.
The wind howls. There's stuff crashing in here. You're getting attacked. It is so full on. So as an experience, the game isn't the most polished. There are parts that are a bit clunky and annoying, but I genuinely think as an artistic piece set in the world of Mad Max, they nailed it.
Yeah, I agree. It is the best Mad Max game, and yeah, there's only been 2 games, but better than nothing, right?
Thanks, Kalia.
Now, Mad Max is something I've been really looking forward to for a while. I love the original movie, and Fury Road recently was very good.
Yes, it is.
But now, this was made by the same guys that did Just Cause.
Yeah, so you sort of expect big, chaotic explosion, fun time. You expect it just to be a dumb, doofy game.
Yes, which it is to an extent. And there's a lot of fun to be had with that because Just Cause was really that game where you drive around and make your own fun. You'd blow up something and then drive on to the next place. And this is sort of what you do in Mad Max as well. And the fact that you can like upgrade your car and just go around to all the places, it looks like a lot of fun. I just got to finish Metal Gear Solid 5 first.
And that's the thing.
And then I'll get onto it properly.
They release these 2 games in the same time. It might be counter-programming, yes, but for at least us here on New Game Plus, I think one of those games definitely fell under the shadow of the other.
Still getting through Witcher 3 New Game Plus. It's just too much at the moment. But I will definitely get back to it because I really enjoy Mad Max.
Although with the new expansion for The Witcher 3, it includes physical Gwent cards.
Yes. I'm quite bad at Gwent, so I'm still going to end up getting the physical Gwent deck. I think there's the Monster deck and the Scoia'tael deck that you get with the expansion. So I'm really keen to play that. But I don't know, I'm more keen for the expansion itself because Heart of Stone, I believe it's called, looks really good. An extra 10, 15 hours of gameplay.
Just a tiny bit of game
there. Well, compared to the hundreds of hours that's in the full game itself and all the free DLC that we got along the way. I mean, I'm just very excited for it and keen to get back into it.
I just want to go back into my box and just sneak around Afghanistan. Thank you very much.
Yes, but that's it for this week. Next week we have Mario Maker.
Super Mario Maker. Yes, as in we've seen this at the Nintendo World Championships. It looked awesome back then, but whether it lives up to that potential, whether our imaginations are up to creating such wonderful monstrosities of levels? Well,
Yes.
we'll find out next week.
Yes, really. Hopefully, it doesn't fall into like the Little Big Planet problem where people don't create good levels.
Oh, people will though. It's Mario.
People. Yes.
How quickly will it take for someone to create World 1 in this game?
Yes. Yes. It'll be very quick. But that's it for this week. So visit our website www.newgameplus.tv.
Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/NewGamePlusTV.
Follow our Twitter and Instagram at NewGamePlusTV.
And follow us on YouTube. We are New Game Plus TV, where we host our videos and live streams.
Thank you, Donald.
Thank you, Tim.
We'll see you guys next week.